The First Book of the Odysseys of Homer. The Argument. The Gods in council sit, to call Ulysses from Calypso's thrall, and order their high pleasures thus. Grey Pallas to Telemachus in Ithaca her way address'd, and did her heav'nly limbs invest in Mentas likeness, that did reign King of the Taphians, in the main whose rough waves near Leucadia run, advising wise Ulysses' son to seek his father, and address his course to young Tantalides, that govern'd Sparta. Thus much said, she shew'd she was heav'n's martial maid, and vanish'd from him. Next to this, the banquet of Wooers is. Another argument. Alpha. The Deities sit, the man retir'd, the Ulyssean wit by Pallas fir'd. The man, O Muse, inform that many a way Wound with his wisdom to his wishéd stay, That wander'd wondrous far, when he the town Of sacred Troy had sack'd, and shiver'd down. The cities of the world of nations with all their manners, minds, and fashions he saw and knew. At sea felt many woes, much care sustain'd to save from overthrows himself and friends in their retreat for home. But so their fates he could not overcome, though much he thirsted it. O men unwise, they perish'd by their own impieties, that in their hunger's rapine would not shun the oxen of the lofty going sun, who therefore from their eyes the day bereft of safe return. These acts in some part left tell us, as others, deified seed of Jove. Now all the rest, that austere death outstrove At Troy's long siege, at home safe anchor'd are, Free from the malice both of sea and war. Only Ulysses is denied access To wife and home. The grace of Goddesses, the rev'rend nymph Calypso, did detain him in her caves, Past all the race of men enflam'd to make him Her lov'd lord and spouse. And when the Gods had destin'd that his house, Which Ithaca on her rough bosom bears, The point of time wrought out by ambient years, Should be his haven, contention still extends Her envy to him, ev'n amongst his friends. All Gods took pity on him; only he, That girds the earth in the cincture of the sea, Divine Ulysses ever did envy, And made the fix'd port of his birth to fly. But he himself solemniz'd a retreat To the Æthiops far disunder'd in their seat, In two parts parted, at the sun's descent, And underneath his golden orient The first and last of men, t' enjoy their feast Of bulls and lambs in hecatombs address'd. At which he sat, giv'n over to delight. The other Gods in heav'n's supremest height Were all in council met; to whom began The mighty Father, both of God and man, Discourse, inducing matter that inclin'd To wise Ulysses, calling to his mind Faithful Ægisthus, who to death was done By young Orestes, Agamemnon's son. His memory to the Immortals then Mov'd Jove thus deeply: "O how falsely men Accuse us Gods as authors of their ill, When, by the bane of their own bad lives instill, They suffer all the miseries of their states Past our inflictions, and beyond their fates, As now Ægisthus, past his fate, did wed The wife of Agamemnon, and, in dread To suffer death himself, to shun his ill, Incurr'd it by the loose bent of his will In slaughtering Atrides in retreat, Which we foretold him would so hardly set To his murderous purpose, sending Mercury That slaughter'd Argus, our considerate spy, To give him this charge: Do not wed his wife, Nor murder him, for thou shalt buy his life With ransom of thine own, impos'd on thee By his Orestes, when in him shall be Atrides' self renew'd, and but the prime Of youth's spring put abroad, in thirst to climb His haughty father's throne by his high acts." These words of Hermes wrought not into facts Ægisthus' powers. Good counsel he despis'd, and to that good His ill is sacrificed. Pallas, whose eyes did sparkle like the skies, Answer'd: "O sire, supreme of Deities, Ægisthus past his faith, and had desert To warrant our infliction, and convert May all the pains such impious men inflict On innocent sufferers to revenge as strict, Their own hearts eating. But that Ithacus, thus never meriting, Should suffer thus, I deeply suffer. His more pious mind divides him from these fortunes. Though unkind is piety to him, giving him a fate more suff'ring than the most unfortunate, so long kept friendless in the sea girt soil, where the sea's navel is a sylvan isle, in which the Goddess dwells that doth derive her birth from Atlas, who of all alive the motion and the fashion doth command with his wise mind, whose forces understand the inmost deeps and gulfs of all the seas, who, for his skill of things superior, stays the two steep columns that prop earth and heaven. His daughter 'tis, who holds this homeless driven still mourning with her, evermore profuse of soft and winning speeches, that abuse and make so languishingly, and possess'd with so remiss a mind her lovéd guest, manage the action of his way for home, where he, though in affection overcome in judgment, yet more longs to show his hopes his country's smoke leap from their chimney tops, and death asks in her arms. Yet never shall thy lov'd heart be converted on his thrall, austere Olympius. Did not ever he in ample Troy thy altars gratify, and Grecians' fleet make in thy off'ring swim? Jove, why still then burns thy wrath to him?" The Cloud assembler answer'd: "What words fly, Bold daughter, from thy pale ivory? As if I ever could cast from my care Divine Ulysses, who exceeds so far All men in wisdom, and so oft hath giv'n To all the Immortals, thron'd in ample heav'n, So great and sacred gifts. But his decrees, That holds the earth in with his nimble knees, Stand to Ulysses' longing so extreme, For taking from the God foe Polypheme His only eye, a Cyclop that excell'd All other Cyclops, with whose burden swell'd The nymph Thoosa, the divine increase Of Force's seed, the great God of the seas. She mix'd with Neptune in his hollow caves, And bore this Cyclop to that God of waves, For whose lost eye the Earth shaker did not kill Erring Ulysses, but reserves him still In life for more death. But use we our pow'rs, And round about us cast these cares of ours, All to discover how we may prefer His wish'd retreat, and Neptune make forbear His stern eye to him, since no one God Can, in spite of all, prevail but 'gainst a man." To this answer made the grey eyed maid: "Supreme of Rulers, since so well apaid The blessed Gods are all then, now in thee To limit wise Ulysses' misery, And that you speak as you referr'd to me Prescription for the means, in this sort be Their sacred order: let us now address With utmost speed our swift Argicides, To tell the Nymph that bears the golden tress In the isle Ogygia, that 'tis our will She should not stay our lov'd Ulysses still, But suffer his return. And then will I to Ithaca, to make his son Apply his sire's inquest the more, Infusing force into his soul, to summon The concourse of curl headed Greeks To council, and deter each wooer That hath been the slaughterer of his fat sheep And crooked headed beeves, from more wrong to his mother, and their leaves take In such terms as fit deserts so great. To Sparta then, and Pylos, where doth beat Bright Amanthus, the flood and epithet To all that kingdom, my advice shall send The spirit advanc'd prince to the pious end Of seeking his lost father, if he may Receive report from Fame where rests his stay, And make, besides, his own successive worth Known to the world, and set in action forth." This said, her wing'd shoes to her feet she tied, Form'd all of gold, and eternified, That on the round earth o'er the sea sustain'd Her ravish'd substance, swift as gusts of wind. Then took she her strong lance with steel made keen, Great, massy, active, that whole hosts of men, Though all heroes, conquers if her ire Their wrongs inflame. Back'd by so great a sire Down from Olympus' top she headlong div'd, And swift as thought in Ithaca arriv'd, Close at Ulysses' gates, in whose first court She made her stand, and for her breast's support Lean'd on her iron lance, her form impress With Mentas' likeness, come as being a guest. There found she those proud wooers, that were then Set on those ox hides, that themselves had slain, Before the gates, and all at dice were playing. To them the heralds, and the rest obeying, fill'd wine and water; some still as they play'd, and some for solemn supper state, purvey'd with porous sponges, cleansing tables, serv'd with much rich feast, of which to all they curv'd. Godlike Telemachus amongst them sat, griev'd much in mind, and in his heart begat all representment of his absent sire. How come from far off parts his spirits would fire with those proud Wooers' sight, with slaughter parting their bold concourse, and to himself converting the honours they usurp'd, his own commanding. In this discourse he first saw Pallas standing unbidden entry, uprose and address'd his pace right to her, angry that a guest should stand so long at gate, and coming near, her right hand took in his own her spear, and thus saluted: "Grace to your repair, fair guest, your welcome shall be likewise fair. Enter, and, cheer'd with feast, disclose the intent that caus'd your coming." This said, first he went, and Pallas follow'd. To a room they came, steep, and of state. The jav'lin of the dame he set against a pillar vast and high, amidst a large and bright kept armoury, which was, besides, with woods of lances grac'd of his grave fathers. In a throne he placed the man turn'd Goddess, under which was spread a carpet, rich and of deviceful thread, a footstool staying her feet, and by her chair another seat, all garnish'd wondrous fair, to rest or sleep on in the day, he set, far from the prease of Wooers, lest at meat the noise they still made might offend his guest, disturbing him at banquet or at rest, even to his combat with that pride of theirs, that kept no noble form in their affairs, and these he set far from them, much the rather to question freely of his absent father. A table fairly polish'd then was spread, on which a reverend officer set bread, and other servitors all sorts of meat, salads and flesh, such as their haste could get, serv'd with observance in. And then the sewer pour'd water from a great and golden ewer, that from their hands to a silver caldron ran. Both wash'd, and seated close, the voiceful man fetch'd cups of gold, and set by them, and round those cups with wine with all endeavour crown'd. Then rush'd in the rude Wooers, themselves plac'd, the heralds water gave, the maids in haste serv'd bread from baskets. When, of all prepar'd, and set before them, the bold Wooers shar'd their pages plying their cups past the rest. But lusty Wooers must do more than feast, for now, their hungers and their thirst allay'd, they call'd for songs and dances. Those, they said, were the ornaments of feast. The herald straight a harp, carv'd full of artificial sleight, thrust into Phemius' a learned singer's hand, who till he much was urg'd on terms did stand, but, after, play'd and sung with all his art. Telemachus to Pallas then, apart, his ear inclining close that none might hear, in this sort said: "My guest exceeding dear, will you not sit incens'd with what I say? These are the cares these men take, feast and play, which easily they may use, because they eat free and unpunish'd of another's meat, and of a man's, whose white bones wasting lie in some far region, with the incessancy of showers pour'd down upon them, lying ashore, or in the seas wash'd naked; who, if he wore those bones with flesh and life and industry, and these might here in Ithaca set eye on him return'd, they all would wish to be either past other in celerity of feet and knees, and not contend t' exceed in golden garments. But his virtues feed the fate of ill death, nor is left to me the least hope of his life's recovery. No, not if any of the mortal race should tell me his return, the cheerful face of his return'd day never will appear. But tell me, and let truth your witness bear, who, and from whence you are, what city's birth, what parents, in what vessel set you forth, and with what mariners arriv'd you here? I cannot think you a foot passenger. Recount then to me all, to teach me well Fit usage for your worth. And if it fell in chance now first that you thus see us here, or that in former passages you were my father's guest. For many men have been guests to my father. Studious of men his sociable nature ever was. On him again the grey‐eyed maid did pass this kind reply: "I'll answer passing true all thou hast ask'd. My birth his honour drew from wise Anchialus. The name I bear is Mentas, the commanding islander of all the Taphians, studious in the art of navigation, having touch'd this part with ship and men, of purpose to maintain course through the dark seas to the other languag'd men. And Temisus sustains the city's name for which my ship is bound, made known by fame for rich in brass, which my occasions need. And therefore bring I shining steel instead, which their use wants, yet makes my vessel's freight that near a ploughed field rides at anchor's weight. Apart this city, in the harbour call'd Rhethrus, whose waves with Neæus' woods are wall'd. Thy sire and I were ever mutual guests at either's house, still interchanging feasts. I glory in it. Ask when thou shalt see Laertes, the old hero, these of me from the beginning. He, men say, no more visits the city, but will needs deplore his son's believ'd loss in a private field. One old maid only at his hands to yield food to his life, as oft as labour makes his old limbs faint; which, though he creeps, he takes along a fruitful plain, set all with vines, which husbandman like, though a king, he proins. But now I come to be thy father's guest. I hear he wanders, while these Wooers feast, and, as the Immortals prompt me at this hour, I tell thee out of a prophetic pow'r, not as profess'd a prophet, nor clear seen at all times what shall after chance to men. What I conceive for this time will be true. The Gods' inflictions keep your sire from you. Divine Ulysses yet abides not dead above earth nor beneath, nor buried in any seas as you late conceive, but with the broad sea sieg'd is kept alive, within an isle by rude and upland men, that in his spite his passage home detain. Yet long it shall not be before he tread his country's dear earth, though solicited and held from his return with iron chains. For he hath wit to forge a world of trains, and will, of all, be sure to make good one for his return, so much relied upon. But tell me, and be true, art thou indeed so much a son, as to be said the seed of Ithacus himself? Exceeding much thy forehead and fair eyes at his form touch, for oftentimes we met, as you and I meet at this hour, before he did apply his pow'rs for Troy, when other Grecian states in hollow ships were his associates. But, since that time, mine eyes could never see renown'd Ulysses, nor met his with me." The wise Telemachus again replied: "You shall with all I know be satisfied. My mother certain says I am his son. I know not, nor was ever simply known By any child the sure truth of his sire, But would my veins had took in living fire From some man happy, rather than one wise, Whom age might see seis'd of what youth may prize. But he, whoever of the mortal race Is most unblest, he holds my father's place. This, since you ask'd, I answer." She again: "The Gods sure did not make the future strain Both of thy race and days obscure to thee, Since thou wert born so of Penelope. The style may by thy after acts be won Of so great sire the high undoubted son. Say truth in this then, what this feasting here? What all this rout? Is all this nuptial cheer? Or else some friendly banquet made by thee? For here no shots are, where all sharers be. Past measure contumeliously this crew Fare through thy house, which should th' ingenuous view Of any good or wise man come and find, Impiety seeing play'd in every kind, He could not but through every vein be mov'd." Again Telemachus: "My guest much lov'd, since you demand and sift these sights so far, I grant 'twere fit a house so regular, rich, and so faultless once in government, should still at all parts the same form present That gave it glory while her lord was here. But now the Gods, that us displeasure bear, Have otherwise appointed, and disgrace My father most of all the mortal race. for whom I could not mourn so were he dead, amongst his fellow captains slaughtered by common enemies, or in the hands of his kind friends had ended his commands, after he had egregiously bestowed his pow'r and order in a war so vow'd, and to his tomb all Greeks their grace had done, that to all ages he might leave his son immortal honour. But now Harpies have digg'd in their gorges his abhorred grave. Obscure, inglorious, death had made his end, and me, for glories, to all griefs contend, nor shall I any more mourn him alone. The Gods have given me other cause of moan. For look how many Optimates remain in Samos, or the shores Dulichian, Shades, and Cynthus, or how many bear rule in the rough brows of this island here. So many now my mother, and this house, at all parts make defame and ruinous. And she her hateful nuptials nor denies, nor will dispatch their importunities, though she beholds them spoil still as they feast all my free house yields, and the little rest of my dead sire in me perhaps intend to bring ere long to some untimely end. This Pallas sigh'd and answer'd. "O," said she, "absent Ulysses is much miss'd by thee, that on these shameless suitors he might lay his wreakful hands. Should he now come, and stay in thy court's first gates, arm'd with helm and shield, and two such darts as I have seen him wield, when first I saw him in our Taphian court, feasting, and doing his deserts' disport, when from Epirus he return'd by us, from Ilus, son to Centaur Mermerus, to whom he travell'd through the wat'ry dreads, for bane to poison his sharp arrows' heads, that death but touch'd caus'd, which he would not give, because he fear'd the Gods that ever liv'd would plague such death with death. And yet their fear was to my father's bosom not so dear as was thy father's love. For what he sought my loving father found him to a thought. If such as then Ulysses might but meet with these proud Wooers, all were at his feet but instant dead men, and their nuptials would prove as bitter as their dying galls. But these things in the Gods' knees are repos'd, if his return shall see with wreak enclos'd these in his house, or he return no more. And therefore I advise thee to explore all ways thyself, to set these Wooers gone, to which end give me fit attention. To‐morrow into solemn council call the Greek heroes, and declare to all, the Gods being witness, what thy pleasure is. Command to towns of their nativity these frontless Wooers. If thy mother's mind stands to her second nuptials so inclined, return she to her royal father's tow'rs, where the one of these may wed her, and her dow'rs make rich, and such may consort with grace so dear a daughter of so great a race, and thee I warn as well. If thou as well wilt hear and follow, take thy best built sail, with 20 oars mann'd, and haste to enquire where the abode is of thy absent sire. If any can inform thee, or thine ear From Jove the fame of his retreat may hear, For chiefly Jove gives all that honours men. To Pylos first be thy addression then, To godlike Nestor; thence to Sparta haste, To gold lock'd Menelaus, who was last Of all the brass arm'd Greeks that sail'd from Troy; And try from both these, if thou canst enjoy News of thy sire's return'd life anywhere, Though sad thou sufferest in his search a year. If of his death thou hearest, return thou home, And to his memory erect a tomb, Performing parent rites, of feast and game pompous, and such as best may fit his fame, And then thy mother a fit husband give. These past, consider how thou mayst deprive Of worthless life these Wooers in thy house, By open force, or projects enginous. Things childish fit not thee, the art so no more. Hast thou not heard how all men did adore Divine Orestes, after he had slain Ægisthus, murdering by a treach'rous train His famous father? Be then, my most lov'd, valiant and manly, every way approv'd as great as he. I see thy person fit, noble thy mind, and excellent thy wit, all given thee so to use and manage here, That even past death they may their memories bear. In meantime I'll descend to ship and men, that much expect me. Be observant then of my advice, and careful to maintain In equal acts thy royal father's reign." Telemachus replied: "You ope, fair guest, a friend's heart in your speech, as well express'd As might a father serve t' inform his son; All which sure place have in my memory won. Abide yet, though your voyage calls away, That, having bath'd, and dignified your stay With some more honour, you may yet beside Delight your mind by being gratified With some rich present taken in your way, That, as a jewel, your respect may lay Up in your treasury, bestow'd by me, As free friends use to guests of such degree." "Detain me not," said she, "so much inclin'd To haste my voyage. What thy lovéd mind Commands to give, at my return this way Bestow on me, that I directly may Convey it home; which more of price to me, The more it asks my recompense to thee." This said, away grey eyed Minerva flew, Like to a mounting lark, and did endue His mind with strength and boldness, and much more Made him his father long for than before. And weighing better who his guest might be, He stood amaz'd, and thought a Deity Was there descended, to whose will he fram'd His pow'rs at all parts, and went so inflam'd Amongst the Wooers, who were silent set, To hear a poet sing the sad retreat The Greeks perform'd from Troy; which was from thence Proclaim'd by Pallas, pain of her offence. When which divine song was perceiv'd to bear That mournful subject by the list'ning ear Of wise Penelope, Icarius' seed, Who from an upper room had giv'n it heed, Down she descended by a winding stair, Not solely, but the state in her repair Two maids of honour made. And when this queen Of women stoop'd so low, she might be seen By all her Wooers. In the door, aloof, Ent'ring the hall grac'd with a goodly roof, She stood in shade of graceful veils, implied About her beauties, on either side Her honour'd women. When to tears mov'd thus she chid the sacred singer: "Phemius, you know a number more Of these great deeds of Gods and men, that are The sacred seeds and proper subjects Of a poet's song, and those due pleasures That to men belong. Besides these facts that furnish Troy's retreat, Sing one of those to these, that round your seat They may with silence sit, and taste their wine. But cease this song, that through these ears of mine Conveys deserv'd occasion to my heart Of endless sorrows, of which the desert In me unmeasur'd is past all these men, So endless is the memory I retain, And so desertful is that memory, Of such a man as hath a dignity So broad it spreads itself through all the pride Of Greece and Argos." To the queen replied Inspir'd Telemachus: "Why thus envies my mother him that fits Societies with so much harmony, To let him please his own mind in his will To honour these? For these ingenious And first sort of men, that do immediately From Jove retain their singing raptures, Are by Jove as well inspir'd with choice Of what their songs impel. Jove's will is free In it, and therefore theirs; nor is this man To blame that the repairs the Greeks make Homeward sings. For his fresh muse Men still most celebrate that sings most news. And therefore in his note your ears employ. For not Ulysses only lost in Troy The day of his return, but numbers more The deadly ruins of his fortunes bore. Go you then in, and take your work in hand, Your web and distaff, and your maids command To ply their fit work. Words to men are due, And those reproving counsels you pursue, And most to me of all men, since I bear The rule of all things that are manag'd here." She went amaz'd away, and in her heart Laid up the wisdom Pallas did impart To her lov'd son so lately, turn'd again Up to her chamber, and no more would reign In manly counsels. To her women she applied her sway, and to the Wooers he Began new orders, other spirits bewray'd Than those in spite of which the Wooers sway'd. And, whiles his mother's tears still wash'd her eyes, Till grey Minerva did those tears surprise With timely sleep, and that her Wooers did rouse Rude tumult up through all the shady house, Dispos'd to sleep because their widow was. Telemachus this new giv'n spirit did pass on their old insolence. Ho! you that are my mother's wooers, much too high ye bear your petulant spirits. Sit, and while ye may enjoy me in your banquets, see ye lay these loud notes down, nor do this man the wrong because my mother hath disliked his song, to grace her interruption. 'Tis a thing honest, and honour'd too, to hear one sing numbers so like the Gods in elegance, as this man flows in. By the morn's first light I call ye all before me in a court, that I may clearly banish your resort, with all your rudeness, from these roofs of mine. Away, and elsewhere in your feasts combine. Consume your own goods, and make mutual feast at either's house. Or, if ye still hold best, and for your humours more sufficed fill, to feed, to spoil, because unpunish'd still, on other findings spoil. But here I call th' eternal Gods to witness, if it fall in my wish'd reach once to be dealing wrecks, by Jove's high bounty these your present checks to what I give in charge, shall add more range to my revenge hereafter, and the pains ye then must suffer shall pass all your pride, ever to see redress'd or qualified. At this all bit their lips, and did admire his words sent from him with such phrase and fire, which so much mov'd them, that Antinous, Eupitheus' son, cried out: "Telemachus, the Gods, I think, have rapt thee to this height of elocution, and this great conceit of self ability. We all may pray, that Jove invest not in this kingdom's sway thy forward forces, which I see put forth a hot ambition in thee for thy birth." "Be not offended," he replied, "if I shall say I would assume this empery if Jove gave leave. You are not he that sings, 'The rule of kingdoms is the worst of things.' Nor is it ill at all to sway a throne. A man may quickly gain possession of mighty riches, make a wondrous prize set of his virtues. But the dignities that deck a king, there are enough beside in this circumfluous isle that want no pride to think them worthy of, as young as I, and old as you are. An ascent so high my thoughts affect not. Dead is he that held desert of virtue, to have so excell'd. But of these turrets I will take on me to be the absolute king, and reign as free as did my father, over all his hand, left here in this house slaves to my command." Eurymachus, the son of Polybus, to this made this reply: "Telemachus, the girlond of this kingdom let the knees of Deity run for, but the faculties this house is seiz'd of, and the turrets here, thou shalt be lord of, nor shall any bear the least part off of all thou dost possess, as long as this land is no wilderness nor ruled by outlaws. But give these their pass, and tell me, best of princes, who he was that guested here so late, from whence, and what in any region boasted he his state, his race, his country? Brought he any news of thy returning father, or for dues of moneys to him made he fit repair? How suddenly he rush'd into the air, nor would sustain to stay and make him known, his port show'd no debauch'd companion?" He answer'd: "The return of my lov'd sire is past all hope, and should rude fame inspire From any place a flatt'ring messenger With news of his survival, he should bear No least belief off from my desperate love; Which if a sacred prophet should approve, Call'd by my mother for her care's unrest, It should not move me. For my late fair guest, He was of old my father's, touching here From sea girt Taphos, and for name doth bear Mentas, the son of wise Anchialus, And governs all the Taphians studious of navigation." This he said, but knew it was a Goddess. These again withdrew to dances and attraction of the song, and while their pleasures did the time prolong, the sable even descended, and did steep the lids of all men in desire of sleep. Telemachus into a room built high, of his illustrious court, and to the eye of circular prospect, to his bed ascended, and in his mind much weighty thought contended. Before him Euryclea, that well knew all the observance of a handmaid's due, daughter to Opus Passanarides, bore two bright torches, who did so much please Laertes in her prime, That for the price of 20 oxen he made merchandise of her rare beauties, and love's equal flame To her he felt as to his nuptial dame, Yet never durst he mix with her in bed, So much the anger of his wife he fled. She, now grown old, to young Telemachus 2 torches bore, and was obsequious Past all his other maids, and did apply Her service to him from his infancy. His well built chamber reach'd, she op'd the door. He on his bed sat, the soft weeds he wore Put off, and to the diligent old maid Gave all, who fitly all in thick folds laid, And hung them on a beam pin near the bed, That round about was rich embroidered. Then made she haste forth from him, and did bring The door together with a silver ring, And by a string a bar to it did pull. He, laid, cover'd well with curled wool, Woven in silk quilts, all night employ'd his mind About the task that Pallas had design'd.